Washington, D.C., the capital city of the United States,
is named after George Washington. George Washington was born on February 22, 1732, in the British colony of Virginia. The D.C. stands for District of Columbia,
which is a federal district that was established as the national capital in 1790, with land donated from the states of Maryland and Virginia.
The city was named in Washington's honor. And the Columbia, in District of Columbia, is a poetic name for the United States that was in use at the time,
referencing Christopher Columbus. George Washington was not Washington, D.C., but rather he is a central figure in American history.
George Washington was the first president of the United States, serving from 1789 to 1797. He is also known for his leadership during the American Revolutionary War as the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Washington is often referred to as the father of his country, for his pivotal role in the founding of the United States.
George Washington grew up on the family plantation in Westmoreland County, Virginia. He was born into a moderately prosperous Virginia farming family that owned several plantations and slaves. Throughout his childhood and adolescence, Washington lived in various locations in Virginia, including the Ferry Farm near Fredericksburg, where he moved with his family at the age of 6 following his father's death. Washington's early life in Virginia, including his education and work on the farms, played a significant role in shaping his character, values, and future career. George Washington did not attend high school in the way we understand it today. In the colonial period when Washington was growing up in the early 18th century,
the educational system was vastly different from the contemporary education system,
with no formal high schools as we know them. Education for most children, especially in rural areas, was based on home tutoring. Local schools run by private tutors or the church, or for the wealthier families, private tutors brought into the home. Washington's own education was limited and primarily focused on basic literacy, math,
and skills like surveying. It ended when he was about 15 years old.
The concept of high school education,
with a standardized curriculum intended for teenagers, developed much later than Washington's time.
George Washington's formal education was relatively limited and sporadic,
especially when compared to some of his contemporaries who had more extensive formal schooling or attended universities.
His education was primarily received in the formative years of his childhood and early adolescence,
coming to an end by the time he was around 15 years old.
Washington was taught at home and in small local schools,
by a variety of tutors and possibly at a school run by the local church. His studies included basics such as reading, writing, and arithmetic,
along with some surveying and possibly a bit of geometry and Latin.
Despite the lack of formal education, Washington was a lifelong learner.
He was particularly interested in military arts, agriculture, and geography. Over time, he became a skilled land surveyor,
which was his first profession.
Washington's keen interest in agricultural innovation and management also helped him manage and expand his Mount Vernon estate. His leadership skills, vision, and capacity to learn from experiences in others contributed significantly to his success as a military leader
and as the first president of the United States.
Washington's writings, including thousands of letters,
also reflect his thoughtful and analytical approach to issues, a testament to his self-education and intellectual curiosity.
George Washington's parents were Augustine Washington and his second wife, Mary Ball Washington. Augustine Washington was a planter, a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses,
and involved in various business ventures.
Mary Ball Washington was Augustine's second wife and is often celebrated for her role in raising George and educating him in his early years, especially after the death of his father when George was 11 years old. George Washington was born into a moderately prosperous family that was well established in the planter class of colonial Virginia. His family was involved in agriculture, particularly tobacco cultivation, and they owned several plantations as well as enslaved people who worked on these lands. Parents.
His father was Augustine Washington, 1694 to 1743, and a plantation owner,
a justice of the Westmoreland County Court, and a member of the Virginia House of Burgesses.
He had two marriages, first to Jane Butler and, after her death, to Mary Ball.
His mother was Mary Ball Washington,
1708 to 1789, and she was Augustine's second wife,
and the mother of George Washington.
She outlived her husband by many years, and her relationship with George was complex but impactful in his early years. George had several half-siblings from his father's first marriage to Jane Butler and full siblings from Augustine's marriage to Mary Ball. Half-siblings, from Augustine's marriage to Jane Butler: Butler Washington, Lawrence Washington, Augustine Washington Jr. and Jane Washington.
Full siblings, from Augustine's marriage to Mary Ball Washington: Betty Washington Lewis, Samuel Washington, John Augustine Washington,
Charles Washington and Mildred Washington, died young.
Marriage:
George Washington married Martha Dandridge Custis, a wealthy widow with 2 children, John Parke Custis and Martha Parke Custis, in 1759. While George and Martha did not have children together, he raised her children from her previous marriage as his own extended family. Through his marriage to Martha, George Washington also became involved in the lives of his wife's grandchildren, whom he adopted and raised after the death of Martha's son John Parke Custis.
These included Eleanor Parke Custis and George Washington Parke Custis, who both spent significant parts of their childhood at Mount Vernon.
George Washington Parke Custis became known for his efforts to memorialize his adoptive grandfather's legacy. This family environment and the responsibilities that came with it played a significant role in shaping Washington's character, leadership,
and the decisions he made throughout his life, including his stance on slavery in his later years.
George Washington's involvement in politics began during his early adult life when he took an interest in local affairs and colonial governance.
His early experiences in the military, particularly during the French and Indian War,
and his connections within Virginia's social and political circles helped set the stage for his entry into politics.
However, Washington's formal political career truly began to take shape during the years leading up to the American Revolution
and the subsequent founding of the United States.
Some key milestones in George Washington's political journey include: Virginia House of Burgesses. Washington was elected to the Virginia House of Burgesses in 1758,
marking his first official entry into politics.
The House of Burgesses was the legislative body of the Virginia colony,
and served as a training ground for many future American Revolution figures.
Opposition to British policies.
Washington became increasingly critical of British colonial policies,
including taxation without representation,
which led to his involvement in various protests and opposition to British rule. Continental Congress. Washington's reputation as a military leader and his stance against British rule led to his selection as a delegate to the First and Second Continental Congresses,
where he played a crucial role in shaping the revolutionary movement.
Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. Washington's leadership of the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War further solidified his position as a central figure in American politics. His military successes and ability to keep the Continental Army together during difficult times enhanced his reputation.
Presidency.
After the successful conclusion of the Revolutionary War, Washington's leadership qualities and statesmanship positioned him as the natural choice for the first President of the United States.
He was unanimously elected as president in 1789 and served 2 terms,
helping to establish many of the precedents and institutions that would shape the young nation.
Throughout his political career, Washington demonstrated a commitment to public service,
a strong sense of duty, and a vision for a united and independent America.
These qualities, along with his leadership abilities,
played a crucial role in shaping his legacy as a founding father and the first president of the United States.
George Washington's political achievements are numerous and significant,
shaping the course of American history and establishing foundational principles for the young nation. Some of his key political achievements include:
revolutionary leadership. As Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army during the American Revolutionary War,
Washington displayed remarkable leadership, resilience, and strategic skills. His leadership was crucial in securing American independence from British rule.
Presidency. Washington's most notable political achievement was serving
as the first President of the United States from 1789 to 1797.
During his 2 terms in office, he played a key role in establishing the framework of the new government
and setting precedents for future presidents. Establishing the presidency, Washington's conduct as president helped shape the role and responsibilities of the presidency.
He set precedents for a two-term limit, the title, Mr. President,
and the idea of a peaceful transition of power.
National unity, Washington's efforts to promote national unity
and overcome regional differences were crucial in holding the young nation together. His leadership helped establish a sense of American identity and fostered patriotism.
Foreign policy, Washington navigated delicate foreign policy issues, such as maintaining neutrality in European conflicts
and establishing diplomatic relationships with other nations. His administration negotiated treaties and maintained peace during a turbulent time in Europe.
Economic policies, Washington's administration implemented important economic policies, including the establishment of the First National Bank,
the creation of a national currency, and the promotion of economic stability and growth.
Bill of Rights, although not directly involved in drafting the Bill of Rights,
Washington supported its adoption as a safeguard for individual liberties.
The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution,
was ratified during his presidency. Establishing federal authority, Washington's leadership helped strengthen the authority of the federal government and enforce the supremacy of the U.S. Constitution. His actions during the Whiskey Rebellion demonstrated the federal government's ability to maintain order and enforce laws.
George Washington's political achievements are central to his legacy
as a founding father and the pivotal role he played in shaping the early American Republic.
His leadership, vision,
and commitment to democratic principles laid the foundation for the United States as a nation.
George Washington was not a prolific author in terms of publishing books, but he did write various letters, speeches, and official documents throughout his life
that are considered important historical sources.
Some of the notable works attributed to George Washington include Farewell Address, 1796, one of Washington's most famous writings. His farewell address was published as a public letter
and contained his advice to the American people as he prepared to retire from the presidency. It addressed issues such as national unity,
the dangers of political factions, foreign relations,
and the importance of the Constitution.
Correspondence and letters. Washington wrote thousands of letters during his lifetime,
addressing a wide range of topics from military strategy and governance to personal matters.
His correspondence provides valuable insights into his thoughts, character, and leadership style. Collections of his letters have been published in various volumes. Diaries and journals. Washington kept detailed diaries and journals throughout his life,
documenting his experiences, thoughts, and observations.
These writings offer a glimpse into his daily life, military campaigns, and political activities. Rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation. While not authored by George Washington, he is often associated with this work based on a set of rules
he copied by hand as a young man.
The rules cover topics of etiquette, manners, and behavior, reflecting the social norms of his time. While George Washington's writings may not include traditional books or treatises, his letters, speeches, and official documents remain important historical documents that offer valuable insights into his character, leadership, and the early history of the United States. George Washington did receive recognition and honors during his lifetime and posthumously for his leadership, service to the country,
and contributions to American independence.
However, it is important to note that the concept of modern awards and decorations, as we know them today, was not prevalent during Washington's time.
Here are some forms of recognition and honors that George Washington received.
Congressional Gold Medal. In 1776, the Continental Congress awarded George Washington the first Congressional Gold Medal for his leadership during the American Revolutionary War.
This was a significant honor at the time.
Honorary degrees.
Washington received several honorary degrees
from institutions such as Harvard College
and Yale College in recognition of his service and leadership. Monuments and memorials.
Numerous monuments, memorials, and statues have been erected in honor of George Washington, including the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C.,
which stands as a tribute to his legacy.
Various tributes. throughout his lifetime and beyond.
George Washington received various tributes, honors,
and accolades from states, organizations,
and individuals for his contributions to the nation.
While George Washington may not have received awards in the way we understand them today, his recognition and legacy
as one of the founding fathers of the United States,
the first President of the United States,
and a central figure in American history have solidified his place as a celebrated and revered historical figure.
While George Washington himself did not appear in movies, but he has been a central figure in many films and television productions depicting historical events related to his life
and the founding of the United States. Several actors have portrayed George Washington in various movies,
documentaries, and TV shows.
Here are a few notable portrayals of George Washington in media.
John Adams, TV miniseries, 2008.
In this HBO miniseries, George Washington is portrayed by David Morse.
The series follows the life of John Adams,
but Washington appears as a significant character.
Turn, Washington's Spies, TV series, 2014-2017.
In this AMC series based on the book Washington's Spies, The Story of America's First Spy Ring, by Alexander Rose, George Washington is portrayed by Ian Kahn.
The Crossing, TV movie, 2000.
Jeff Daniels portrayed George Washington in this A&E television film,
which centers on Washington's crossing of the Delaware River
during the American Revolutionary War.
National Treasure, film series, 2004 and 2007. Although not a historical portrayal,
George Washington is a significant figure in the National Treasure movies, where his character is part of a treasure hunt storyline.
Christopher Plummer provides the voice of George Washington in these films.
These are just a few examples of George Washington's portrayal in film and television.
His character is often depicted in historical dramas, biopics, and documentaries that explore different aspects of his life, leadership, and legacy.
At the time of his death in 1799, George Washington's estate was valued at an estimated $500,000.
Adjusted for inflation to this modern time, this amount would be equivalent to several $1 million. But comparing Washington's net worth of $780,000 to the worth of the average modern American would equate to $594.2 million in current value. In this modern time, Washington's wealth primarily came from his land holdings, including Mount Vernon and other properties, as well as investments in land, agriculture, and other ventures. Washington was one of the wealthiest individuals in the American colonies
and owned significant amounts of land and enslaved people.
His will detailed the distribution of his assets among family members,
friends, and various causes, reflecting his values and priorities.
George Washington, having lived in the 18th century,
did not have access to cars as we know them today.
The automobile was not invented until the late 19th century, long after Washington's time. As a historical figure who lived during the colonial era and the early years of the United States, George Washington primarily traveled by horse, carriage, or boat. These modes of transportation were common during his lifetime and were essential for travel and communication in the 18th century. Washington's journeys often involved horseback riding or traveling in horse-drawn carriages for both practical and ceremonial purposes.
George Washington's primary residence was Mount Vernon,
located in Virginia along the Potomac River. Mount Vernon was a plantation estate that Washington inherited from his half-brother, Lawrence Washington. Over the years, Washington expanded and developed Mount Vernon into a significant property, which eventually became his family home. Mount Vernon served as the backdrop for many key events in Washington's life, including his time as a planter, military leader, and political figure. The estate included a mansion, gardens, outbuildings,
and extensive farmland worked by enslaved individuals.
Today, Mount Vernon is a historic landmark and museum that preserves and interprets Washington's legacy for visitors. George Washington made numerous significant contributions to American society
during his lifetime, leaving a lasting impact on the nation's history.
Some of his key contributions include revolutionary leadership. Washington played a crucial role
as commander-in-chief of the Continental Army
during the American Revolutionary War, leading the colonies to victory against British forces
and securing American independence.
Founding father. As one of the founding fathers of the United States, Washington helped shape the principles and institutions of American democracy. He presided over the Constitutional Convention of 1787, where the U.S. Constitution was drafted, and his leadership during that period was instrumental
in establishing the new nation's governmental structure.
First President. George Washington served as the first President of the United States from 1789 to 1797, setting precedents
and establishing the norms of the executive branch.
His leadership as President helped solidify the federal government
and unify the newly formed United States.
National unity. Washington played a significant role
in fostering national unity and patriotism,
emphasizing the importance of putting the interests of the country above regional or partisan divisions. His leadership helped establish
a sense of American identity and national pride.
Role model. Washington's character, integrity,
and commitment to public service set a standard for future leaders.
He was admired for his humility, dignity,
and sense of duty, becoming a role model for generations of Americans.
Presidential precedents.
Washington established many presidential precedents,
including the two-term limit, the title, Mr. President,
the practice of delivering an inaugural address, and the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power.
Outdoor spaces. Washington's passion for agriculture
and landscape design influenced the development of outdoor spaces in America.
His landscaping at Mount Vernon
and interest in farming practices set examples for land management and horticulture.
Foreign relations. Washington's cautious approach to foreign relations
and his commitment to neutrality set the stage
for America's non-interventionist foreign policy stance. His administration negotiated treaties
and navigated complex diplomatic issues with European powers.
Support for veterans. Washington was a strong advocate for supporting veterans of the Revolutionary War.
After the war, he lobbied Congress for pensions and benefits for soldiers who had served in the Continental Army.
Educational support. Washington believed in the importance of education and supported various educational initiatives. He donated funds to establish schools and colleges, including what is now Washington and Lee University,
and the Washington College in Maryland.
Relief efforts. During his presidency and after,
Washington was involved in charitable efforts to provide relief to those in need.
He contributed to relief efforts after natural disasters
and supported organizations providing aid to the poor and disadvantaged.
Philanthropic giving. Washington was known to make generous donations
to charitable causes and individuals in need.
His philanthropy extended to supporting churches, orphanages,
and community projects aimed at improving living conditions for the less fortunate.
Legacy of service. Washington's commitment to public service
and civic duty set a precedent for future leaders
to engage in charitable endeavors and give back to their communities. His actions inspired a culture of philanthropy
and public service among his contemporaries and future generations.
While George Washington's charity endeavors may not have been as extensively documented as his military and political achievements, his commitment to helping others and supporting worthy causes
exemplified his belief in using his influence and resources to benefit society as a whole.